I can't lie, I haven't been into the MCU the last few movies. While there are some that I've enjoyed besides the obvious, I just haven't been into it as much as I was pre-Endgame. But just a few days ago I saw Thunderbolts and I thought it was one of the best Endgame projects. And with their next 4 films, this is probably the best upcoming slate the MCU has had to offer in a while. In Thunderbolts, the Void traps his victims into what's being called shame rooms, and my idea for this video came as a joke I made on Twitter. In this video I wanted to take all 3 Spider-Men and theorize what their shame rooms could be. While it is realistic that Tom Holland's Spider-Man went through one of these shame rooms during the events of Thunderbolts, it will be interesting to explore the hypothetical that Tobey and Andrew also experienced this, and I will be discussing a few options as seen in the movie. The Void is a series of interconnected rooms. Beginning with the Spider-Man who started it all, the obvious choice for what Tobey's Spider-Man could have experienced in the Void is the death of Uncle Ben. However, I don't think it would just be the scene in which Tobey finds him dying, but rather the argument the two have before Peter leaves the wrestling match. In a way, Peter has already relived this scene, as there is a scene of the two talking to one another in the car in Spider-Man 2, but that goes a bit differently. So of course the obvious choice for what Tobey would experience in the Void is the argument he had with Uncle Ben prior to his death and the discovery of his death. But aside from that, there are a few moments from the trilogy that I think Peter could have experienced, one being one of the worst nights of Peter's life in Spider-Man 2 when he gets into a fight with Harry and MJ agrees to marry John Jameson. But if we go off what Peter said in No Way Home, perhaps this wouldn't be one of the options considering it did work out between the two. But relating to that, I would say Tobey would have to relive his moment that he hits MJ in the jazz club in Spider-Man 3 as he was under the influence of the symbiote, and that's what ultimately drove him to remove it. But some other options also include the loss of the Osborns as Peter was close to the two. I think another option could be Peter's conversation with Aunt May in Spider-Man 2 when he reveals the truth of what happened to Uncle Ben that night, as it was hard for Peter to finally come forward and tell her. But it is safe to say the Raimi trilogy includes a lot of tragic moments in Peter's life, and I'm sure I'm missing another moment. Next we have Andrew's Spider-Man, and much like Tobey, the obvious choice is the argument with Uncle Ben prior to his death and his inevitable fate. But another tragic moment from The Amazing Spider-Man 1 is the death of Captain Stacy, which still haunts Peter carrying over to the sequel. But I think it's more likely that this Peter Parker would have to relive the death of Gwen the most in the Void. This is his moment that separates him from the other Peter Parkers, and even seeing him years later in No Way Home, this was the moment he had to share with Tom, as it is the one that impacted him the most. I actually feel like Andrew would have the most tragic Void Room experiences, as he loses everybody close to him throughout his films, and loneliness is one of the themes that Thunderbolts deals with. Lastly, finishing with the Spider-Man who likely experienced going through these shame rooms is Tom Holland's, and probably the easiest to think of for what he could have experienced is the death of Tony Stark and Aunt May, and lastly his scene with MJ in the cafe after the entire world forgets who Peter Parker is. I think it would be interesting actually if the cafe scene is how Brand New Day opens, since it would make it seem more like Spider-Man is actually a part of the MCU without needing to include another hero, and it also plays into the theme of loneliness seen in Thunderbolts. With Spider-Man being a tragic character throughout each iteration, it is interesting to consider what each version would have gone through during the events of Thunderbolts, and the concept itself is interesting to me, and I'm sure there's more moments from these films that I didn't cover in this video. So let me know what you all think regarding the Void and what you think each Peter Parker would have went through. Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching, be sure to subscribe, follow my social medias, hit that like button, and I'll see you guys again in my next video.